companies will increasingly look to align how they actually manage their brand internally and externally vis-a-vis the workplace. And what we think it means is that as we kind of go back to this graph and think about how organizations have historically arranged their space, we would see over the next 10 to 15 years a significant shift away from occupying space that doesn't inherently connect to organizational brand, to innovation and collaboration among people, and to employee services at a deep level. And that these other things, these flexible accommodations where I would typically go to warehouse myself within a corporate office, that those will largely transition, some within the context of a corporate provider, but certainly not one which actually begs the same rules today of entitlement, tradition, hierarchy, and allocation. So what we may see in the future is corporates who actually maintain 40 to 50% of their current portfolio. The rest may become very flexible lease arrangements or other service providers filling that void in some scale that does not exist today. And so why do we think that's important? We come back to this idea of the new mantle, and that organizations will become more deliberate and focused on making sure that the core of their operations, their brand, the essence around their product development are actually well managed and maintained and secure. But we'll see this flexibility around the edge, this new mantle being driven by the pressure of employees to demand a different way of working. That organizations will no longer find it viable to force their employees to come into work because they'll choose other alternatives that give them greater convenience and happiness. And so what we believe is, as we look at what that's going to be driven by, is clearly the employee demand. And we believe they're there today as we look at what we're hearing as we analyze the work experience leading organizations are having and what they look to the future to have. Employees are already there. The big consideration is risk. How do we actually manage information in a highly decentralized, ubiquitously connected world? As Philip talked about earlier, the cloud computing, the ability to actually locate all of your infrastructure at some secure, highly secured facility will mitigate this. So risk will decreasingly become a consideration. And finally, the question of scale, which I'll turn back to Ben.
And this is the difficult one because there are questions here of time and what is the alternative. We've got various versions of alternatives at the moment. We're hearing one today. Obviously, the British Library is a fantastic exponent of an alternative way of working and providing space for that. You've got serviced office providers who provide space as well, and then you have Starbucks, and of course you have people's homes. But to put that into context, service offices within the UK market at the moment account for around 172,000 seats, which is less than 1% of the entire market. So we're talking about a very thin crust at the moment on top. And the challenge that we're being set by clients, and the question that we're being asked is, are the products in the market that will enable us to do this? And I think there are two things that are going to have to happen over time. And when we talk about time, we're talking about 10, 15 years, because as you heard earlier, when you're planning a massive HQ or you're planning a big move, a consolidation, you're planning that 5 years in advance. And so when you're thinking about that, your business will require that they have guarantees around the risk mitigation at that point as they commit to various modes of operation. And so we see this being a long-term trend. And the only way that it's going to happen when we go back to the fact that actually real estate is a relatively small cost, but in this model could represent a large risk to the business, is for new supply to come into the market, and we think new players will come in. We think there'll be larger versions of serviced offices. We think there'll be local serviced offices, a kind of retail approach to it. We've already seen sort of kind of the bespoke approach. On one of the slides we saw the hospital, and I think we'll see more of those kind of clubby-like atmospheres. But the time it's going to take for someone to come up through the crust, as it were, with an offer that will be accepted by the market as a viable option is not next year or the year after. It's going to take time. And going back again to what needs to happen internally, we talk about cloud computing, etc., and how that's going to be one of the key enablers here. How many of your organizations actually are ready to drive that out into the business and enable that kind of device choice that we were talking about earlier? So while we see the opportunity and we see that the market demand is there from the clients we're working with, we don't actually yet see the answer. But I'm sure that there's going to be someone that comes along with a very good answer, and we'll do very well out of it. Thank you very much.